back to my path where I was a child. What is truly important in this writing is not what your eyes find, but the deep reason you feel or respect and hear that is born from the writer's heart. You find an illumination inspiring you that responds to that attractive tendency that, at all times, leads you to seek an answer to this hint existing in you, a need for fullness to your finitude, to your limitation of being, an existence that always seeks infinity, and you find it in the answer traced and arranged in these teachings, gestures, and events. It is what we call reply and answer to a restlessness in you, to respond to a hope. What is it for you to enter from now on in this life in the kingdom of heaven? To become a child in your adulthood before our God the Father at Jesus' command. If you do not become like children, you will not enter in the kingdom of heaven. I return to my path where I was a child, which is, as I grow older, to make my later years the childhood of my immortality. I consider it very important and interesting. As intelligent people, the ability we have to go to the bottom of the events and communicate our opinions, participate our ideas and our feelings to provoke certain reactions in others. Even changes in the life of other people turn around the course of existence that leads an individual. This is knowing how to communicate. Only you choose the way you are going to affect other people's heart, and those decisions are what life is about. And the power to make them is always in the present, because a whole life in the every instant, as a thinker expressed. Because life is not measured in minutes, but in moments, instants. Therefore, the moment to love and serve is now. Thinking that sometimes you have to go through difficult paths to reach these wonderful destinations. I appreciate what life gives me, this moment, this day, because it will not give it to me twice. If in my interior there is light and I leave the windows of my soul open by means of joy, all those who pass through the street in darkness will be illuminated by my light. This is to give one's life for the needy, like the gift of life that the soldiers make for the homeland, his body, his life, his death, by making them empty, renouncing them, destroy them, temporarily sublimates them, to find them magnifying, divinized, because the reason for which they were immolated was suffering. This is condensation, to accommodate out of pure kindness to the taste of will of another. God does it with the fallen man, out of the pure gift of the truth of supreme gift, is always this divine gift. Any obstacle presenting to us in this life can represent a challenge that, if overcome, will lead us to a new stage in personal growth, when it's the riskier to do too little than to do too much. We live in a world that is uniquely ours, being at the center of a divine request for everything, which only a few have known and teach it, relying on ourselves in a glow that seduces, listening to half-voiced words that summon, recognizing as silent, a divine going and tolerating, which is the same as living in the glove with God, finding Him in His works and in His words. And if we have this hope of, even in this life, enjoying this good that is God for Himself, what do we do? What do we stop at? What is enough to make us stop looking for this God for a moment? By doing this, you will fall in love with your own existence, and your new and next reality will be greater. Your destiny and coming will be happy. It is convenient to look at the reason for the crisis in which humanity has always lived. Man ceased to be a child before God, as the children were both naked, man and woman, but were not ashamed of each other. He transgressed before God, being in the earthly paradise in his natural state, newly created. He ate at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and lost the natural state, the state of being a child before God. As he was created, man felt the steps of God through the garden and hid himself. I am naked, and therefore I have hidden myself, pronounced man. To go deep into this event, told in the sacred book, is to go deep into this human crisis that is currently in this situation of sin and forgoodness of God, and to offer an answer. The depth of the work contracted today with God is great, and the pure souls can pay it with their sacrifices. And you, wherever this path of life has led you, even if it is the lowest, you have opened the door. You have taken a step under the bright light of the sun. You can always return home. There is always a prayer every day. God will guide you as you go along the way. In this crisis of humanity, it is necessary to overcome mental narrowness and observe a complete picture in the face of progressive and irreversible modifications, in the face of common and necessary constraints, to take advantage of the opportunity for change that a conjuncture and crisis present us, to change our attitude, to gain self-confidence, and to understand that we can overcome our obstacles. If crisis can be understood as a complicated situation, an important modification in the development of an event, you will eat bread with the sweat of your face. You are dust, and to dust you will return. It must be taken into account that the crisis is very positive in all cases, because it questions many things that are then ordered and are even much better than before. A challenge that if solved and overcome will lead to a new stage of progress and growth. Development of humanity. The crisis is an opportunity for development when the ability to discern is used, because every cloud has a silver lining, as the saying goes. It is necessary to question the crisis of humanity through its causes and consequences in order to find an authentic humanizing value that defines itself as the motor of history. That from the crisis a new world full of hope emerges in which everything is about to manifest itself. The immensity of an event in this crisis of humanity, a God with us, a God made of man, an incarnated God, Jesus Christ. There will come a time when spirituality is reborn in the human heart, and we give more relevance to our relationship with others and the universe, with God, because everything in the universe has a claim and plea to warn us of the existence of the spiritual, the divine hand, God the Father, a voice that only the heart perceives. The heavens tell us the glory of God, and the firmament announces the work of His hands. It is a light for people that testifies love, power, and wisdom without limits or term. The crisis is a previous step to a fuller life, because sometimes it is difficult for us to leave the comfort to live more freely. In times of need, to take the first step is easier. In this sense, the concept crisis was used by the ancient Greeks to indicate the separation of the wheat from the chaff, to liberate and separate the essential from the superficial. In this crisis of humanity, forgetfulness of God as the substance of all that is human, to placing the science of commercial exchange at the support of the human present and future, sometimes the science conferred has not been and will not be fulfilled. We conquer and win over a present God who has not rejected his people, in whom, beforehand, he set his eyes. He walked into the garden at the hour of the breeze. People who has stumbled and fallen? Not at all, for your fall has been the greatest help for the world, a God who became one of us to overcome the human crisis, to pay for our injustice before an infinitely just and holy God. Today, the individual fixes his attention on something that was lost during the last centuries, the search for truth, to reach a new conception of the world, dreams, aspirations, to return humanity to the lost earthly paradise, to return man to the natural state as he was created. If you did not become like children, to return to being a child before a God we call Father. It is a wise commitment that fits under the domination of intelligence, intellectus, intus legere, read inside, discover and make see what is most intimate or essential in people and in events. Crises and happenings of humanity provide and facilitate to those who propose it an exuberant wealth of human psyche and spiritual happenings, generally hidden to the eyes and silent to the ears, as is God and the human heart itself. God said, "Let us make a man in our image, in our likeness. Male and female, he created them." God saw what he had made. Everything was very good. They were both naked, but they were not ashamed of each other, as children before themselves, before God. But in this paradise crisis was not long in coming. God placed in the middle of the garden the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, created the human being with freedom. "You shall not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, lest you die," God commanded them. The crafty serpent deceived the woman, and this one the man. They ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the crisis came to the humanity. The man failed to God, the man broke against the command of God. Distortion of his nature and of the whole creation was what the human being did by the abuse of his freedom. But here is a light to understand the mystery. You imprisoned all men in rebellion in order to use mercy with all of them, the apostle affirmed. He let humanity fall into the offense of God in order to have them whom to forgive, with whom to be mercy and love. Why would you exist if there were nothing or no one to give life to? Why you be loved if there were no one to love, to forgive, with whom to be and have mercy? Humanity's crisis is always very positive, because God intervenes. You were rebels against God, but now you have obtained mercy because of your rebellion, says the apostle. O abyss of riches, wisdom, and knowledge! How unfathomable are his designs and inscrutable his ways! Indeed, who has known the thought of God, or who has his concealer? And God became one of us to solve the crisis of humanity. The man for whom the society rejoices because the authority removed him from earth, that man was, a few years ago, a smiling child before his mother, in whose eyes the presence of God was reflected. This perfect child, whose beauty will fade with time, then he reaches his birthday. When he grows up, and his mother wonders, what became of that beautiful child who was born one day, whom I knew, who came from my womb, whom I kissed, whom I caressed in my arms? Where is that beautiful child whom I loved? God was in the child's eyes, a man in the earthly paradise, before whom the mother's mind prayed and glorified God, a child who manifested within himself a great being, an inner greatness that he could not discover, a reason that others understood who he was and what the reason for his existence was. That child whose mother knelt beside his cradle and full of peace sang him to sleep, ignoring the purpose of his appearance in the world. That child whose gaze on things was childish, full of astonishment, was the original gaze of the human being, the childish gaze, the gaze of a man in the earthly paradise. It is to look only at what surprised the universe, the beauty and grandeur of everything, to feel and live the poetry of the universe. For the childhood of a child like you, like me, must be the childhood of humanity, as it was in that God with us on Bethlehem. It is the childhood of that child of the manger, who was equal to our birth, the beautiful child who sleeps in the poverty of a crib of manger, in whom the eyes of his mother, Mary, are fixed, that child of whom it was heard singing love and prosperity to some characters called angels. His mother celebrates him because he arrived one more life to the world. That child for whom she worries like crazy because he has shelter in the crib on the cold December night. That child who is visited by the local shepherds, who took turns to hold him, each one for the moment, in their arms. This great human being, you, me, with a great design as child, has not lost in his adulthood. He continues to be the reason for his existence, for his passage through the world. Whatever he does or stops doing, that child is humanity that, in spite of its sin and abuse of its freedom, has not lost its natural primordial state, as it was created by God in the beginning. Now in the present, fallen humanity, fallen man, there is always the dissatisfaction, the longing to return to the being the child of the earthly paradise, a longing for infinity strong in his heart by the same Spirit of God, from the beginning, reigns and purpose that he has not discovered, although he suffers them because of the negative circumstances that came into his life or hid them from him, changed them for others, bringing an evil destiny to his existence of earth. Is it that child now, that young rebel, no conformist, thirsty for justice, with the conscience of a social victim, who lives in a world that only understands life as a commercial exchange? Is it that adult who cannot integrate into the world, insensitive to pain and injustice, to nature, love, social deafness? It is humanity in crisis. This young man, this adult, races against a social reality that denies his dreams. He longs now and here for his childhood, his natural primordial state, the paradise of Genesis in which he was created, is today a lost world. It represents Adam and Eve expelled from the paradise of childhood, a loss of natural state due to circumstances external to him, loss of the innate condition of man, loss of the creator of humanity. In the distant infancy, in the loss of the earthly paradise, was always the pleasing, and God planted a garden in Eden in the east, where he placed the man he had formed. That man took of the forbidden fruit, and he and his wife ate it, thus losing his natural state. Cursed be the ground for thy sake. Thou shalt take food from it with toil. Thou shalt eat bread with the sweat of thy brow. Thou art dust, unto dust shalt thou return. He is no longer but a slave to his body, and it is because of his cause of slavery in his life that his days are spent in misery and disdain, and his nights are always filled with blood and tears. Submissive slave and prisoners, chained, life bound under heavy chains and knees bowed to impulses which they cannot overcome. These men are but slaves to their whims, which make them live like criminals and die despised. By living the conviction that the work is above all gods, let us sow a seed of change and transformation in these people by opening their eyes, by showing them the true path, the truth, by discovering the beauty existing in their persons, their purpose, their destiny. Speak to them in a timely manner, in the silence that exists in their lives, to act as support and light when these people need it. Give them a piece of you, to give yourself. Evangelize by knowing how to declare to them the essential and profound of the gospel of Jesus. When he commands to be like children before God the Father, if you do not become like children, you will not enter in the kingdom of heaven. This is to return to the natural state, to the original state of humanity, as it was created by God in the beginning. So God took the man whom he had formed and led him in the Garden of Eden to till it and take care of it. And God walked in the garden at the time of the breeze. In this word is expressed the natural state of man and woman, primal as they were created at the beginning, introduced in the sensational venture of living in a garden, the Garden of Eden, forgetful of everything. They live the present and only continue exploring and learning, as children express their emotions only from the joy of living. They manifest themselves as they are. They were both naked and were not ashamed of each other. Here you discover that the best moments of your life are those when you live and look like a child. With amazement, you contemplate everything and express it without any fear. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful, fill the earth and subdue it." Man, being a child before God the Father exists, lives as he was created, in his natural state, with the natural tendency of being human so close to God. God created the human being in his own image, he created him. To return to my path where I was born and was a child, I want with my little hands to clean and take hold once again of the kingdom of heaven, to return to the lost earthly paradise, to my natural state of childhood, original, as God created me. God created mankind in his own image, male and female he created them, that they should rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and the beasts of the field. Happy he created them. They were like children. They were naked and were not ashamed of each other. Let go of the past and be free again. Be as you were born, as God made you at the origin of your creation. Be a child before God, surrender to the great and beautiful that surrounds you, and record the initial innocence with which you were created. Be like the child who plays happily, oblivious to everything around him, to the world, oblivious to worries. Enjoy only every moment. Let the capacity of amazement flood you. You will find in every moment an adventure to contemplate and share. Adults, let us remain children, but before our God the Father. Return to God, and God in his presence constitute the earthly paradise, and God walked in the garden. Today God walks in this earthly paradise, which is the heart of a child, because for God there is no past or future, only present. Man loses this paradise by the misuse of his freedom. The child loses it when he becomes an adult and misuses his freedom. This image of heaven, joy and peace called earthly paradise is lived by a child, where he cannot reason because he lives the security of feeling protected, loved, and affectionate. He likes to throw himself and be embraced by the arms of an adult. That image of happiness that radiates in the child's eyes, in his creaturely gaze, is a perfect, amazing, enigmatic, and inexplicable expression of the presence of God in his interiority, externalized in an unalterable tranquility and joy, and although he cannot differentiate fantasy from reality, he enjoys praying and being spoken to about God the Father. This is Jesus' command. Be like children, return to the earthly paradise, which is your childlike heart. If you do not become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus said, if the eyes of a child are a mirror of his soul, his contemplation of others, the world around him, he expresses it through his eyes. There's no adversities, no whys, no whens, no hows, only serenity before the gaze of all things and events. A wide range of emotions dominate his behavior: astonishment, admiration, dependence, anger, which he expresses in emotional outbursts. Because children act according to how they feel, therefore emotions dominate their behavior, they believe everything adults tell them. Listen to the dialogue between the child and the toy that revives him and tells him about the amazing dinosaur. The child speaks and responds to the language expressed by the toy at hand. The child also talks to the doll she has at hand. Between her and the doll, there is a language that the adult perceives in them and is amazed. She listens to her pretty doll that talks to her about the beauty and tenderness of the woman she is. She associated with the emotions and feelings of a woman. It represents something alive to her. She explores and hears in her feelings, she guesses in herself and the world that surrounds her. I want to return to my path, where I was born, to my childhood, to my natural original state, as I was created at the beginning of my existence. To find there the charm I enjoyed when I was a child, when I only thought about my toys and teddy bears, where there are no worries about anything because you feel protected. To see the world again through the eyes I had as a child, just to contemplate it with amazement that is to look at its wonders as if it were the first time, with eyes of tenderness and peace, like a child who sees something new and opens his eyes, fix his gaze and manifest admiration and amazement. I want to go back to chasing the butterfly that rests on a flower, to count and be enraptured by its beautiful colors. When it rests on a flower, it opens its wings to show them. I want to run to the nearby fountain where the rainbow drinks, to embrace it and bring it with me. To become a child as Jesus commanded, with glances full of admiration at night, to direct all my attention in front of the dazzling sky of stars and the galaxies, to praise God the Father, to thank Him for so much wonder, not to lose sight of the flowers that open their petals and dawn, the bird that is it, swift flight catches a flying insect. I want to remember my mother, for whom there was never a child so adorable to make him sleep at night, and in the morning wake up him with a kiss, my father, who embraced his son. I want to be that child conscious at every moment of the presence of God the Father, because for me, having grown up does not mean having stopped being a child, the one who accepts himself for what he is, not for what he does, the one who teaches you, with his expression, not with his words, what life is all about. Mom, I cannot, I'm small. Small that before God does not affit but attracts his hand and rejoices with the care of God the Father. This is to deliver the absolute management of our existence in the hands of God, equal to the weight of happiness and peace that children have towards mom and dad. Spiritual childhood, total trust and abandonment in the arms of God the Father. Receive the kingdom of heaven as a child and enter it, Jesus said, humble and small before this supreme reality of God the Father. Such a short path that if you really follow, you are always at the end. The world, every event, everything is completely new for children. They have the innate capacity to be amazed. They live in great admiration before the beautiful, the exceptional and impressive that emerges in everything around them. Children live a great amazement when they open their eyes. So many things sprout before their eyes, and then they rejoice. All the things that surround them bring them enjoyment. Let us contemplate and be like Mary, who sitting at the feet of Jesus, chose the best part. I want to go back to being that child who only understands magical moments, who feels amazement and joy for so many little things, who marvels and rejoices for the everyday and insignificant, that is to hear God in all things to be happy. The child, even though he feels pain, does not suffer. He only expresses himself in his crying. This is the child speaking to his parents. Let us live this spiritual childhood, which undoubtedly makes life have a greater flavor and meaning by living this total dependence of God and as the child of his parents. Let us not neglect prayer. The child lives in a recognition that he needs everything from his parents. He expresses, he speaks it by throwing himself into their arms. So I live in humility before God, not recognizing myself as self-sufficient. From Him, everything comes to me, starting with life, to stop, to observe, to delight myself with and with what surrounds me, to awaken the capacity of astonishment before the small things, always in the present, because for a child, the past and the future do not exist. When you change the way you look at everything, the things you see change too. What is outside is only a reflection of the splendid light that comes from within. Things are not as they are, but as we look at them. By registering the exceptional and beautiful in all that surrounds us, we are led to recognize and give thanks to the author of all, beginning when we examine nature, where everything seems familiar to us at first sight. But do you hear the song that all things express? How this reason emerging from everything fills my spirit? Do you not hear all the objects and events are filled with voices? But you hear only from afar, and these voices do not reach you. Your ears are filled with many noises, and your deafness. You have let these cries pass in silence, but let them speak in your silence too. The sunflowers are tilted before the light of the sun, but if you see them tilted too much, it's because they are dead. Live as this flower teaches, tilted towards the light that radiates from the heart. Thus, you will live bending the path that the gospel of Jesus points out to you, to be a child before God the Father. And life will continue to be beautiful, which is to return to be the Adam and Eve told in the book of Genesis. Back to my path, where I was a child.